Hey, Chris DeSantis here for Chris DeSantis Coaching, and I wanted to record a video today, and the title of the video is High Standards and Being Hard on Yourself Are Not the Same Thing. This is a topic I find myself going to a lot in my coaching, and I want to sort of explain the broad outlines of where I'm coming from. Obviously, in a YouTube video, I'm not going to get in as depth as I would if I'm working with a team where I'm working with an individual person, but I think there's a lot even that you can learn from a basic overview of this topic. Before we get into that, standard social media plug. If you want more positive psychology based content, you can go and follow me at Instagram, Chris D_coach at, Chris D_coach. That's on Instagram. You can like and subscribe here. Please get in the comments section. If you look on comments on my videos, I try to interact with people and get back to people. And I love having people come on here and talk. And it's great for the algorithm. More people can find it. I think more people are going to find videos too, because as of this video or a few videos before this, we sort of upgraded the quality and look of things a little bit more. So back to the topic at hand, because I think this is a very important one, especially in the context of sports, although it really has applications way beyond that for people that in general are just sort of high achieving in anything or trying to be high achieving in something, which I think is most of us. And that is, I see that a lot of people who are high achieving, they are high achieving because they have very high standards for themselves. And I'm going to get into a little more specifically what I mean by high standards for themselves. But something that many of them have inextricably linked to their high standard is this idea that in order to maintain those high standards, they have to be really hard on themselves. I saw this firsthand. I was coaching a practice last night, and I asked the people that I was coaching to do something that was extremely challenging. It was something that they had not done before. And I gave the standard warning ahead of time to say, like, look, what I'm asking you to do, it's going to be extremely challenging. I do think you're capable of doing it, but if you fail to do it, the only signal that you're getting to yourself, if you know that your effort was honest and full on it, was that you actually pushed to your limit. And that's great news. I think that's a great way to think about any kind of failure. But anyway, the swimmers were doing the set, and I could see that there was a swimmer in the water, somebody who is extremely dedicated, who holds themselves to a really high standard. And she was missing, she was just sort of barely missing some of the stuff that I had asked her to do. And I saw the look on her face. I could see that there was something going through her mind along the lines of, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do it? I failed again, etc. And so I grabbed her after the practice, because in particular, this summer, anytime you're in a group setting, and I think a lot of coaches reflect on this, I have a group of 46 people. I am trying to design a training that works well for everybody there, but I never, can tailor it unless I'm coaching one person at a time, which has happened sometimes in my life. I can never just tailor it to that one individual person. So it's not going to be perfectly fitted. And in this case, yeah, maybe it was slightly too challenging for this individual to complete on that day. But I thought that if they walked away and their reflection on the practice was, I failed, and, what's wrong with me, that they were entirely missing the point. First off, this was somebody who, in the process of generally tailoring things to a group, was doing something that was going to be more challenging for them than a lot of the people around them. It was really, really all the way at the upper limits of what they could possibly achieve on a given day. And so I sort of reminded her, this was a young girl, I said, you know, one thing you may not realize is I ask you to do things that are extremely challenging every day. And most of the time, you just do them. And I don't know that you ever stop to reflect on how amazing that is, that here I know I am a person with extremely high standards. So I am putting those high standards in place in the way that I design training for you. And yet today is the day I see the outsized reaction because you're cued into the fact that you failed, but are you walking away every day that you achieve something amazing and thinking to yourself, wow, I did it. I really did it today? No, probably not. And part of that has to do with this discussion of high standards. So like, what are high standards? I think, this is a good segue into that piece of it. I think high standards for anybody that is trying to achieve something, there's some semblance of knowledge that, you're not going to just like that be able to do it, that you're not going to just be instantly successful in it, that it does take some consistency over time, some repetition in doing something. So part of holding a high standard, I think, is expecting yourself to be at your best and to be at your best consistently, because the accumulation of being at your best consistently will lead to a higher achievement. And I think actually having high standards for yourself is great. I sometimes I see messaging out there. People are being a little bit tortured, and I'll get into that, by their standards. And I see people going like, well, maybe we'll just edit those down a little bit. And, then you won't be so tortured by your high standards. I generally, I don't agree with that thesis. But what I do think is we've got to be able to separate this idea of I'm going to expect myself to be at my best being completely linked with, therefore, when I'm not at my best, I need to pile on to myself. Because I think that's the opposite of what you need in those moments. I don't know, probably all of you have experienced this in your life where somebody other than ourselves, decides to give us a hard time about something that we already give ourselves a really hard time about. And that visceral reaction that you have, because you're like, hey, I don't need that. Like I'm already completely on top of myself on this topic. Now, I want anybody who relates to that to think, go all the way internal and realize that not only do you not need other people, but you don't necessarily need to be so hard on yourself, right? What you are trying to achieve, you are trying to be at your best, and you're trying to be at your best consistently over a long period of time, day after day, practice after practice, work day after work day, school day after school day, whatever your context is. And in order to be able to do that, you need a high level of motivation. Now, undeniably, okay, attacking yourself is on some level motivating because it taps into those primal fears that we have, right? It taps into that automatic part of our nervous system that says we're under attack, we better do something, right? So it is motivating in that way. But if you imagine your own psyche as a fortress, okay, imagine you're setting off a signal that goes, we're under attack, all hands on deck, right? You can imagine that in the short term, the defenders of that fortress within your psyche would be amazing at what they're doing. They would step up and they would give it their all, and they would give the best possible defense. But imagine if that alert that we're under attack, we got to be ready, that vigilance just continued day after day after day after day. Eventually, everybody inside would be exhausted. So these things that naturally tap in very easily to our motivational system, they do work, but over time, they actually make it harder for you to motivate. They make it harder for you to be at your best. So what do you need actually, rather than being so hard on yourself, to be at your best? First off, you're going to need to engage actively, have some sort of active practice for capturing what you're doing well and what is going well, and even for crediting yourself for all those moments when, even though you have a very high standard, that you are achieving the standard, because you don't do that part naturally. Our brain naturally tends to focus on the parts where we don't achieve, where we don't hit the high standard. And it does an amazing automatic job of collecting and accumulating all those pieces. And I think I discuss a little bit why in some of my other videos, especially one where I talk about pessimism as a survival technique. I think I'll try to link to that below this one, because I think that's a good companion to this piece as well. So what your brain actually needs, that brain fortress, in order to continue to mount things and motivate things at their best, is some hope, right? You need to know, like, hey, right now we need to make a big push, and it's going to be worth it, because we will do the next step. We will take the next step we need to take, and things are going to be better, right? You have to allow your own brain to have at least a moment where it imagines things going better, and where you actually acknowledge that things are going better, where you actually acknowledge that you're making progress, or that you're doing something that is leading to a greater outcome down the line. And so a lot of the work that I do with teams or individuals, I have found very, very commonly with teams that, or athletes that feel like, despite the sort of measurables in the practice that they are putting together, that they are underperforming in a competition context, that almost always this is a factor, that you actually have a highly functional part where people are holding themselves to really high standard, but they're not harnessing that high standard and some positive motivation to the long-term pursuit of it. And instead, they are attacking each other. They're attacking themselves over and over again. And over time, that is eroding some of their will to keep doing the thing that they want to do. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I hope if you're listening, you're interested in more stuff like this. It's my pleasure to bring it to you. Really, these are just the things that I think about on a daily basis when I'm coaching or working with a team outside of the team that I coach, or working one-to-one with athletes. Again, like, subscribe, comment on this, or go and follow on Instagram, ChrisD_coach. And you can go to chrisdcoach.com. That's an easy way to reach out to me as well. If you have questions about stuff that I'm writing here, or if you have a simple question, put it in the comments below. Thank you to everybody for listening, and I'll see you again later in the week.